members of the Presidential Task Force, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen of the press, I welcome you all to the national briefing of Monday, 15th June 2020. Let me once again use this opportunity to welcome you back from the 2020 Democracy Day holiday, which we all had to celebrate in a COVID-19 pandemic era. You will all recall that Mr. President, in his broadcast on Friday, 12 June 2020, admonished all Nigerians, and I quote, "Notwithstanding our aspirations, humanity and indeed democracy is under the threat of COVID-19. He added, I quote again, "Nigeria has survived many crises before and came out stronger. I am confident that by the grace of God, we shall overcome this one and emerge stronger and more purposeful." Mr. President's concerns about the impact of COVID-19 is underscored by the fact that 15 paragraphs of his broadcast were dedicated to COVID-19 issues. This buttresses the fact that the virus is still very deadly, and everyone must take conscious effort to stop the spread by adhering to the guidelines and measures prescribed by the Presidential Task Force. In the course of our monitoring and surveillance of compliance across the nation, we have observed an escalation of the level of non-compliance with simple measures to keep social distancing, wearing of masks in public places, sanitation and hygiene. This is more prevalent in markets, motor parks, and some places of worship. I wish to remind you that the Presidential Task Force has already issued guidelines for mode of operations at places of worship, in markets, and other related public openings, and we urge state governments to ensure strict compliance with the PTF guidelines. We wish to re-emphasize that all relaxed measures are still subject to review, and advisories issued are for personal and public safety purposes. The breach of the ban on interstate travels is also a point of concern. Over the last couple of days, you must have observed that the daily figures of the confirmed cases have been on the rise. This is an indication that we are conducting more tests across the country and that we are fully in the community spread phase. We, however, urge Nigerians not to panic, but to cooperate with the public health officials, especially where community testing is ongoing. Since the beginning of our multi-sectoral national response, we have described medical personnel as our frontline workers. We also continuously pleaded with Nigerians to take responsibility. The reality of today is that the table has turned and the community spread phase has suddenly made the health workers our last line of defense. The full import of this situation is underscored by the following quotes from Dr. B. Kalinawaga. I had cause to receive this from somebody yesterday who sent it on my WhatsApp page. And this is the quotation from Dr. B. Kalinawaga. He says, I quote, "The war has shifted to the community, and it is up to you. This cannot be won in the confines of the hospital. We, the healthcare workers, are not your frontliners any longer. We are your last line of defense. You, my fellow people, are the frontline workers now. Ladies and gentlemen, let this sink. You are responsible for protecting yourself, your family, the community, and the country. Gatherings are still not okay of any form. We must avoid it, either driving shows, rallies of whatever category. Be responsible. Lifted restrictions does not mean carelessness and that life is back to normal. Yes, there is a normal, but it's a new normal. The PTF appeals to state governments to embark on wider community testing, enforce rules on social distancing, step up community engagement and risk communication, and pay attention to places of large gatherings. We also appeal to the security agencies to enforce the ban on interstate travels very strictly. We have received reports that some states are contemplating the opening of schools, television viewing centers, sports stadiums, and other places where large gatherings could take place. The Presidential Task Force re-emphasizes that it is not yet safe to do so, and that utmost caution should be exercised in this regard. The PTF guideline should be complied with while considering decision of this in the future. In line with revised protocols, the evacuation of Nigerians stranded abroad has resumed. Over the last weekend, we received 269 from India, while another 102 arrived from Egypt. All the evacuees tested negative before boarding the plane from their destinations and will be retested within 72 hours of arrival in Nigeria. Last week, the Economic Sustainability Committee, led by His Excellency the Vice President, submitted their report to Mr. President on how to address the post-COVID era. This underscores the plan that the federal government would continue to implement measures meant to safeguard the economy. The Presidential Task Force will continue to be guided by the recommendations of the committee in taking some of its far-reaching decisions, as we have done on previous occasions. A lot has been published regarding the studies carried out on asymptomatic individuals and their contacts, to how many develop COVID-19, and the finding that such transmission was very rare. While we note the clarification of the World Health Organization that the interpretation raised a number of questions on the implications of current preventive recommendations, the PTF shares the World Health Organization's position that comprehensive studies on transmission from asymptomatic people are difficult to conduct, but are needed to draw wider conclusions. Some modeling have tried to establish the proportion of asymptomatic patients that may transmit, and there is a big range depending on the models used. But some estimates are that 40% of transmission may be due to asymptomatic cases. The Presidential Task Force shall remain conscious and shall adhere to already recommended measures, particularly physical distancing, wearing of masks, coverings in public places, hand hygiene, and cough etiquette, until we have more evidence to propose otherwise. I now call on the Honorable Minister of Health, followed by the DG of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and the National Coordinator, and thereafter our ministers, to give you updates on new issues. I thank you for listening.